Jalil Sahib.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu.
I met Abdul Rahim Sahab of Mauritius, who's not well these days, lives in Kilburn.
Abdul Rahim Sahab of Mauritius?
Ji.
Achha.
He lives in Kilburn. He is the oldest member of the community in England.
I know Abdul Rahim Sahab very well.
Ji.
Yes, when I was here as a student in 1955, then the most active members of the Jamaat were, there were a few active members of Jamaat. The forward among them were Deen Sahib Marhoom, Aziz Deen Sahib, and also Abdul Rahim Sahib. He was very active during those days.
Mr. Aziz Deen Sahib used to be very, very close to him.
Yes, I remember them both working together in a spirit of comradeship. They were very close, in fact.
I would like to relate one or two instances in his life.
Yes, please.
These days he would love to come here, but he's not well. He's got some breathing problems. He's now 75, and he asked me to request.
75 is not a very old age, is it?
No, it's not.
I think he has not been well for some time. Yes.
He arrived here in 1943, and he was on a ship, in a convoy of ships, which were warned that most of them will be lost on the way, because they were during the war,
yes.
And they were being attacked. So his ships, all the people and the crew on his ship were very worried, and they all had their life jackets on. And he did not wear a life jacket. So they all congregated to him. He said, "What's the matter with you? You don't look worried. Why don't you wear the life jacket?" He said, "When you were all wearing life jacket, I just dozed off for a second or so, and I saw that my grave is being dug in the ground." And he says, "This is an indication by God that I will not drown, because this way my grave will not be on the land." He used to preach them, so they were very surprised, and some of them wondered how God conveys these ideas. And eventually, most of the convoy was lost, of ships was lost, and their ship survived and landed in Scotland, somewhere in Scotland, I believe in Glasgow. And he said he knew of a mosque, Ahmadiyya mosque in England, and he very much desired to come here. And he took permission from someone or one of his authorities and came here. And he found his way. He did not know much of English, but he somehow found his way to Putney. Meanwhile, the ship was ordered to leave, and Mr. Rahim did not know that. And when he went back, the ship had already sailed, and he didn't know what to do. So he came back to the mosque and asked other members to help him or do something. A long time afterwards, he had to get some ration, because during the war they had to have some rations, without which they could not live. So Aziz Deen Sahib and few other members took him to some MP, and he said he would look into it. And he called them back and said, "This man is not alive according to our records, because the ship was attacked as it left Glasgow and was drowned, and there wasn't any survivor whatsoever, and there is no record that someone was left behind."
So the deal was meant only for him.
That's right. This was meant just for him, and everyone else had drowned. He had passed through all sorts of life during the war here, and he has been very closely associated with the
But
Jamaat.
he's still alive, isn't he?
Yes.
The way you have started talking about him, one would imagine perhaps he is not no more alive.
No,
Generally we talk of our dead like this.
See. And he's often reading most of the books of Promised Messiah, and I
So
thought,
convey to him my sincere regards, Assalamu alaikum. And from everybody here, we were very pleased in fact to hear this very, as we call Imam of Rose, faith-inspiring incident. Thank you. Yes, please. Mohammed Sahab? Yes, please. Wa alaikum.
I don't have any question to ask at the moment. I have a friend with me, Mr. Martin Houseman. I'd like to introduce you
Yes,
to
please.
him. Mr. Martin. He might like to ask some questions.
Yes. Mr. Morrison, come here and meet me. No, sorry. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And you?
Please tell me, please. Come, please. If you want to ask questions.
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
Well, I have a few, but I'll ask one at the moment. The promised Messiah, as you believe, Ahmad,
Yes.
was prophesied in the Quran according to your beliefs. How is it that most of Islam do not accept that? That's all.
That's very nice. That's a very elementary question which you should have known the answer of yourself. I'm very surprised. You should have known the answer yourself. Jesus Christ was mentioned in the Old Testament, wasn't he?
Yes.
Most of the Jews refused to believe in him, rejected him, behaved very cruelly. And his claim is that of being the promised Messiah. So what happened with the earlier Messiah, in somehow, not exactly, but there should have been some similarity between the old Messiah and the new Messiah, who claims that he has been named after him. So the way he was treated and his followers were treated is exactly, well, I shouldn't say exactly, but mostly and generally the behavior of the non-Ahmadi Muslims towards the Ahmadiyya community and the founder. There are so many similarities. The time, for instance, yes please?
You're saying similarities between
The first Messiah and the second Messiah who was to come in his name and who had to bear some similarities to him. This is the significance of his being called the promised Messiah. If you understand the Ahmadiyya claim, then everything will become so easy for you to understand. All these questions will become so simple. The fact is that according to our belief, the Messiah was promised, the Messiah that was promised to the Muslims by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not the old Messiah in person. It was to be someone else born in his ummah who was to bear some relationship, some similarities to the older Messiah. And also we believe that when the Messiah himself, peace be upon him, told his followers that he would reappear again, it was exactly the same thing that he meant, that it would not be he in person who would reappear, but someone in his name, bearing his character, would again come and call the people to light as he did. So this is our belief.
Yes, I accept.
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
So why don't the Muslims
believe.
or why don't they accept?
I'm coming to this. Now, that shows that if this claimant is true in his claim, then one should be able to pinpoint many similarities. Unless there is a similarity, one name cannot be given to another person. If there is a great dramatist born today, you may call him Shakespeare. But even if he can't even write an ordinary tale, nobody can, in senses, can call him Shakespeare. I mean, there has to be some similarity. So, one should begin to search similarities, and if one finds a few convincing ones, then it would weigh in the favor of the claimant. Otherwise, he would be proved to be false. So the first similarity which comes to one's mind is about the very prophecy. At the time of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, a similar prophecy was expected to be fulfilled by the Jews. Someone who had ascended to heaven was, according to their belief and according to the testimony of the Bible, was to descend physically, bodily, and told the people, after having come, that the days of Messiah are near at hand, so everybody should prepare to receive him. That was Elijah, which according to the Old Testament had ascended to the heaven bodily, sitting on a chariot, and he would come again. Now Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, solved this problem once and for all. The Jews had become superficial in their behavior, in their conduct. Having lost the spirit of religion, they could not understand this religious terminology. So when Jesus Christ claimed to be the Messiah, they went to him and asked for the whereabouts of Elijah. Where is he? They demanded. And you know the answer. He pointed to Hazrat Yahya, John the Baptist, and said, he is the Elijah who was to come from the heaven. Believe it or not. That was so simple but so true. A truth which is so simply expressed, but it's a truth for all times to come. Nobody has ever repeated his visit on this earth, and nobody will ever repeat his visit. This is the fundamental. This is what has been testified by Jesus Christ, peace be upon him himself. So the same mistake of the Jews at the time of first Messiah has been repeated by the non-Ahmadi Muslims of the time of the second Messiah. And a strange thing, when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, prophesied that Messiah would appear in the latter days, at the same time he also prophesied about the state of the Muslims found then at his time. What would be their affair? What would be their state of mind and attitude? He said they would be exactly similar to the Jews. So much so that you will not be able to differentiate between one and the other. Like a pair of shoes, in which one shoe resembles the other. That these are the words of Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him, about the future of the Muslims among whom the promised Messiah was to appear. So if the disease is similar, then the remedy should also be similar. If these Muslims are not the same Jews, then the Messiah would not be the same Messiah. They are like the Jews, so someone like the Messiah was to come. That is one similarity which is very significant. And the second one, and there are so many, is the time difference. Moses difference, the distance in years between Moses and Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, is almost the same. I mean, one cannot say for certain exactly 1300 years because the historians themselves are not certain. But guessing from various, inferring from various facts available to the historians, this is the time they give. The time between Moses and Jesus is about 1300 years, and that is the time between Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Messiah, the second, the promised Messiah. And the third similarity also is very significant. Moses is declared to be similar to Muhammad, peace be upon him, and peace be upon them, in the Holy Quran itself. It says, God sent a prophet unto Pharaoh and his people, like he has sent a prophet unto you. Kama anzalna ilaykum rasula. Kama arsalna ilaykum rasula. Exactly in the same manner as we have sent a prophet to you. And this is commonly accepted by all Muslims, whether they be Ahmadis or Mennonites, that doesn't make any difference. And this is a commonly accepted principle among the Muslims, that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was similar to Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, in many ways. He was a lawbringer, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, so was Moses. Moses was permitted to defend himself against sword. So was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And many other similarities the scholars have been counting. But coming back to this, although Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, like his earlier prophets, Moses, was permitted to defend himself with sword against sword, Messiah was not. So was the case. So the same was to be repeated at the time of the second Messiah. He was not permitted to raise sword against sword. And this is exactly what has been prophesied by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in one of his traditions. There is not something which Ahmadis have invented as similarity. It was already there. In one of his traditions he says that when Messiah would descend from the heaven, these words are used, descend. But I have already explained what this word descent means here. When he would descend, he would find some very great powers who would be the masters of the earth at that time. And he was thinking of defending the faith against them by physical means as well, but God would reveal to him from heaven that never think of this. And God would tell him that I myself have raised great powers on earth. It is not for the Son of Man to raise arms against these powers, and otherwise he will be crushed. So have recourse to the mountain. Go to the mountain and pray. These are the two weapons with which you are to fight these great powers. Now, prayers everybody can understand, but the mountain has to be explained. But before that, I must tell you the similarity is obvious. The previous Messiah was not permitted to raise sword against sword, which was already raised against him. So was the second Messiah destined not to be permitted to raise sword against the sword which was raised against him, and is still being raised against Ahmadis. Now the mountain, according to the Holy Quran, is the book, the revelation of God. So that means, the Quran itself says that great mountains are similar to the book. And the great great mountains are also referred to in the Holy Quran as great people, great nations, great powers, and so on. So here it means that you have recourse to the book. Fight the enemy with logic as expressed in the book, with arguments as contained in the book, and also through prayers. Ultimately you will win. So this is a similarity, but the similarities don't end here. The next phase is also very clear, and it's a long-lasting phase of similarities. I mean, under one heading, so many similarities appear. When Jesus Christ was not permitted to defend himself or nor were his followers against the offenders, it was not for them to be destroyed at the hand of the oppressor, at the hand of a despot. Otherwise, it would be a very ill-advised injunction for a prophet not to defend himself and to be destroyed and annihilated at the hands of his enemy. I mean, that is no wise thing to say. Unless Allah had underwritten his security and safety, and inherent in this was the message that despite the fact that you will behave like a person who is completely defenseless, yet your enemy, your powerful enemy, would totally fail to annihilate you. On the other hand, on the contrary, instead of reducing you, cutting you to size, with every attack made by the enemy, you will be made larger and bigger, and you will grow and the enemy will diminish. If that was not the message inherent in that teachings, that teaching couldn't be from God. It should have been from some enemy then. And that is exactly what we see in the life of Jesus Christ and his followers that happened later on. Those defenseless people who were put to animals at the mercy of hungry lions and bulls and things, and people started laughing at them when they cried, they became victorious. Those whose heads were cut, they became victorious over those who beheaded them. Those whose houses were burnt, they became victorious over those who were burning the houses. A very strange era of history was unfolded at that time. Now, this is the greatest similarity with the greatest significance. And this is exactly what is repeating itself at the time of the second promised Messiah. A full 100 years of history would bear me out that every time the enemy of Ahmadiyyat took recourse to coercion and force and persecution and prosecution, the result of each such movement of hostility went into the favor of Ahmadiyyat. Instead of being reduced to smaller numbers, they grew in number. Instead of turning into paupers, they became wealthier. Instead of being confined to one country, they spread out. And each movement of annihilation against Ahmadis was totally frustrated and annihilated itself. The same thing happened in 74, it happened again now, it is happening now. So, there are other similarities as well. The Prophet Messiah himself has counted 14 in one of his books, Means Izala or Harm. So I have quoted just a few by way of illustration.
The major similarity is missing, that's the only problem.
Which is?
The divinity.
No, but we don't believe that he was divine.
Well, I know you do.
You see, so naturally it has to miss.
Well,
it has to miss, otherwise there will be no meaning in his coming, because he came to proclaim the unity of God. He came also to rectify what had been wrong by the followers of the the old Messiah himself. So the similarity you are seeking is missing because it was never there, according to us. And this is a point debatable, of course, between you and us. other question or questions, please? Before Mr. Hayat, takes over, once he starts to ask questions, then there is no end to them, unless I put my foot down. Here, in front of you, Mr. Hayat.
Well, my only reaction to what you just said is that Jesus himself claims divinity. I mean, I know you don't believe it.
No, but I tell you, we will open this chapter later on, because we positively believe and we prove our case from the Old Testament, from the saying of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, that he never claimed to be divine. Quite the contrary. He claimed to be a very humble person who was dependent upon his Father in every respect, in prayer, in complete submission to him, and whatever he conveyed not from himself, but from the one who sent him. So if you read the Bible in a different perspective, as we see, of course you have to change your angle of vision for a while to imagine what is the reason why we believe in this. Give it a different turn, and like kaleidoscope, you will begin to see a different picture as well. So after seeing our point of view, the angle from which we observe the Bible and interpret it, if you are not satisfied and if you still prefer the interpretation attributed to Bible by the present day Christians, then we can of course have another course of talk, and we can converse on this. Now, anybody else, please? Yes? Wilson, please go to the microphone and speak there so that your question is recorded. Come closer.
Hi.
Yes. Wilson, who are you, by the way?
Salim Mia.
Salim?
Mia.
Lake's son, huh? No, yes, that's right. Akil, I'm sorry, Akil Mia's son, yes?
Was the movement in Islam chosen? Was the name Ahmadi chosen by the promised Messiah, or was it revealed to him?
That's it. Yes, I couldn't follow, please.
The name Ahmadi chosen by Prophet Muhammad.
Why? Why this name has been chosen?
Was
Or was it revealed?
Acha, I see. Right. Yes. Please sit down. I have read nowhere that positively this name was revealed to him by Allah, but it was ordained by Allah that this name would be the name of the community which he was founding would be Ahmadiyyat. There are two different things. It was not told in so many words that give this name to your community. But the way he thought, why he gave this name, when you understand that, then automatically you have to draw this inference that this was ordained right from the beginning, that this would be the name. Now he gave this name for the only reason that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had two names. One was Muhammad and the other was Ahmad. Muhammad, according to all the Muslim scholars, or at least knowledgeable Muslim scholars, is the name which carries a connotation of glory and grandeur and awe and power with it. And the name Ahmad, on the other hand, is expressive of mild attributes. A light not like that of sun, but a light like that of moon. There is a mildness and a character of love contained in this expression of Ahmad. So Hazrat Masih Maud, the founder of the Ahmadi community, visualized Ahmadiyyat, that is the community he was founding, to be the expression of the name Ahmad. In the first appearance, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, was permitted the use of sword against sword, as I already explained. In the second, he was not to be permitted like that. So the name Ahmad was most appropriate to be given to the second expression of his religion. And also, when you read some writings of the old Muslim scholars and saintly people, you come to realize that it was also prophesied by earlier saints that the second name of Islam in the latter days would be Ahmadiyyat. Because, for instance, Hazrat Mujaddid al-Sani, the reformer who appeared at the beginning of the second 1,000 years, after 1,000 years had passed from the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the great saint who appeared in Islam to reform Islam, he is called by the name of Mujaddid al-Sani, the reformer of the second 1,000 years. He says he saw in a dream, and he mentioned it in one of his books, that as prophecy later on, drawing his inference from his vision, he says that a time would come when Muhammadiyat would ascend from this earth, and in its place Ahmadiyyat would be enforced, and the Muhammadiyat would rise to Ahadiyat, that is the unity of God. And the relationship between, the same relationship between, which was once between Muhammad and his master, would now be between Ahmad and his master Muhammad, that is Ahmadiyyat and Muhammadiyat. So in that strange prophecy, obviously it was mentioned that the second name of the community which would appear in Islam, which would be truly representative of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would be Ahmadiyyat. So Hazrat Masih Maud has himself mentioned these reasons. I don't remember naming very Sani, but he has mentioned the reason why he gave this name to his community. And the fundamental thing is that which I have already mentioned, that this was the second name of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This community was not named after the founder of the community, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, because his name indicates, means he is slave of Ahmad. He is not Ahmad himself. So the Ahmad name belonged originally to Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa, peace be upon him, and it is he who has been referred to in naming the Ahmadiyyat. You follow this? Yes, please.
In a conversation with an Indian, the question came up whether Islam in fact is tolerant to other religions. Was not the Prophet of Islam instructed to purify the house of Allah, and he threw all the 365 gods out of the Kaaba? Then Hazrat Ibrahim also broke the gods into pieces. Was that religious tolerance?
Yes.
He wants to explain it.
Now, as far as the general teaching of Islam and the Holy Quran is concerned, it's very clear and specific on this subject that you should respect even the false gods of others. Don't call them names either. And not to violate the sanctity of the places of worship of other religions. In Surah Jummah, for instance, where jihad is first permitted, the reason given is exactly the same, that the sanctity of the synagogues and the churches and the places of hermits and the mosques all are to be protected. So as far as the teaching is concerned, it is obviously a universal teaching which finds no exception. Two incidents, as you have already quoted, are exceptional, appear to be exceptional as compared to this teaching. As far as the act of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam in throwing out the so-called gods from Kaaba is concerned, the answer lies in the history of Khana Kaaba, which is of a very, very long duration. So much so that the other end of this history is almost invisible. But the Holy Quran keeps the record and repeats that history, and the Arabs of the time of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam also did not deny that history. This was the fact which was commonly acceptable among the Arabs, that this was the place and the reason for its construction was this. Now I am mentioning the fact which has been related in the Holy Quran, that inna awwala baytin wudi'a lin-nasi lalladhi bi Bakkata. This verse indicates that the first house for the glory of God, for the sake of the people or mankind as such, which was ever erected on earth, was this house at Mecca, Hudal lin-nasi, to give guidance to the whole mankind. And secondly, Hazrat Ibrahim himself raised it once again from the ruins. According to the Holy Quran, for the worship of one and the only God. So if these two facts are true, then this house belonged to the unity of God, and it was never built for the worship of idols. They had no right to be there in the first instance. So if you repatriate something to its rightful owner, you cannot call it subversion or coercion or misappropriation, because these terms do not apply here in these situations. This is why there has been going on debate between various religions, that this place belongs to us and not to you, and this belongs to you and not to us, and so on and so forth, because they go back to history and claim that this is the place which originally belonged to us but was captured later on by you. Now, if you go into this debate, this would be a never-ending debate, and it would have a bad reflection on this issue as well. So, I am going to explain this, the difference between this ordinary debate about the possession of a place by people and between this incident. The fact is that Islam does not give physical possession of Khana Kaaba to any particular people there in that case. It rehabilitates the position of its objective, and that is all. Or artificial, imaginary gods had nothing to do. It's not a case of possession of the Arabs against non-Arabs, or one people against another. It is simply a matter of principle that if a building is built for a particular purpose and objective, and some people have changed those purposes and objectives, should that building be rehabilitated to its original purpose or not? The answer of Islam is, by this demonstration, that yes, it should be rehabilitated. So the present day debate which is going on between various people is not a debate of this issue. It is a completely different debate. A physical possession is sought by some nations as against others, and that cannot be accepted as a principle. Otherwise, the whole geography of the entire world would go to pieces, And it would become such a jigsaw puzzle that it would never be able to be solved, because nobody would know which place originally belonged to which country, which people. And the people have also been changing sides, and there have been so many changes in geography. So this is not a question relating to the geography. This is a question relating to the principles. Any people following that principle, worship of one God, have every right to go to Kaaba and to use it. You understand the point? Now, as far as Hazrat Ibrahim is concerned, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam is mentioned to have broken the idols before he was made a prophet, before a teaching was revealed to him. Previously he is understood, and there is a reference in the Holy Quran, to be of the Ummah or Sharia of Hazrat Nuh. Afterwards, when he grew up, a part of his life, up to 50 years according to my calculations, he spent in the Ummah or Sharia of Hazrat Nuh. Later on, he himself was revealed by Allah some injunctions. Now, this incident took place before his 50th year, when he was a child, mere child, just come of age maybe. And there he might not have been clear on this issue. The reason why he did was he wanted to demonstrate to them that these so-called gods cannot defend themselves, cannot bear witness to anything happening around them, cannot in any way support the concept of idolatry which you have adopted wrongfully. So by way of demonstration, he did it. But he also accepted, or was mentally prepared to accept the punishment for this. He did not debate the issue by saying that there were false gods, so I had the right to break them. He knew somehow that the right to break them did not belong to him. So instead of defending him, he said, yes, I have committed this act. And according to your law, you are permitted to punish me. So there again, even if he did it against the Sharia which was revealed before him, we don't know anything about this, what was said in the Sharia of Noah. But still, he was violating law of the people, of the country. And for the punishment he was prepared to accept. And he did it. So no principle in fact was violated, only an illegal act was committed with full responsibility. Illegal in the sense of the law of the country. So that doesn't mean that Islam permits you to violate the sanctity of the places of worship or begin to break idols, not at all. In fact, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam is known to have instructed his people and is known to have given something in writing to the followers of some sacred places near Mecca, not exactly near, at some distance, which belonged to Christians, who came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked for help in this regard. They told him that we are Christians, we have some sacred houses, places of worship and monasteries, etc. on that mountain. I've forgotten the name of that mount. And we want this to be protected by your followers. He said, yes, you have a right. And he gave them a writing, and something was written in his name which bore his authority, that no Muslim, if he is a true Muslim, will ever look with bad intention in that direction, would never break a cross or a church or a place of hermitage, if he does so, he would be violating my orders and would be violating the wish of Allah. Words to that effect were written. Now, if Islam had permitted the violation of other places of worship or other gods which were imaginary, Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam could not have ever done this. Yes, any other questions? All right, Mr. Rashid, you have.
Hazur, I would like to know if there is any comprehensive subject-wise interest of the books of the Prophet Messiah, Caliphs of Ahmadiyya and other scholars of Ahmadiyya. If such an interest is available, it will be a great help for ordinary people and also for scholars to refer back to original sources in one place.
Thank you. This is a very useful question and reminder to me. Now, number one, the books which are being now published as sect will contain an index, I am assuring you, because already the books which we have published, new indices have been prepared for them. And previously, of course, there was a sort of index, but it did not serve the full purpose. Even perhaps this index would not be a perfect index, but it is a much more improvised and much better and wider index that has been prepared now. But this index is being prepared book by book, not as one great big key. So if you want to find out the subject matter as mentioned in the book, in any particular book, then it will be easy for you to reach that subject through the index. Now, and there is the second thing which I wanted to tell you about is that two Ahmadis on their own have been preparing indices of Hazrat Masih Maud books. One is Mirza Abdul Haq Sahib, Amir Jamaat, Punjab. And the second is Mirza Chaudhry Ahmed Mukhtar Sahib, Amir Jamaat Ahmadiyya Karachi, and at present I have also appointed him as Amir Jamaat Ahmadiyya for Suba Sindh. They have worked on these indices laboriously for a long time now. I wonder if they have completed the task by now or not. But the last time I came into touch with them, they had not yet completed the task. The moment these works are ready, either they could be amalgamated into one or one which is better according to two scholars who judge these two respective works. Anyway, either of the two which is found best would be published inshallah. And maybe they themselves publish it individually on their own. So you better remind the Private Secretary tomorrow to write to both these Ahmadi scholars and find out where it stands. The Private Secretary. Yes, please. And the second question now. Yes, please.
For the simple barter system, the economy has moved to department stores, hire purchase, imports and exports, trade and balance of payments. In order to work this system effectively, we need a huge banking system. As the modern banking system is based on interest, would Hazur kindly explain how we can have a banking system without interest to help in financial matters.
Part of this question has already been answered by me in one of the earlier sessions here. And the second part cannot be answered in a small session like this. A full book has to be written on this question. What is the alternative system which could replace the present day banking system based on usury and interest? And we are putting this question as if within 5 minutes I could dispose of the answer. It's not possible. Some scholars have to be put to this task. They have to work out the things and submit reports, and these reports have to be have to be studied and commented upon by some other scholars. This is a task which is very laborious and which will take quite some time. In fact, so far, the government of Pakistan has failed to find an answer. And the system which they have invented to replace the present-day banking system is in fact another system based on usury, though you do not give it the name of usury, but the conditions and the way of rules of conduct are practically the same, only the name has been changed. Similarly, the Arab world has so far totally failed to give a replacement system to the finances of their own country and to their banks. There are some very grave difficulties in the way. The financial system of the world as such has a very strong influence over all the financial transactions in the world. And this is a huge ocean of an economic system. One single country or a few poor countries all put together cannot remain completely independent and uninfluenced by this overwhelming financial system. They have to have some transactions, some assurances, reassurances, and trade balances of trade between them and the other countries which believe in usury and things. And the whole financial systems are completely controlled by a few hands, higher up somewhere. And it's impossible for any poor country to completely wriggle out of their clutches. So something has to be devised to fight it out and to try to escape from the influence of this system by some scholars. I mean, there is no ready answer which I can give you that yes, you adopt this and you will get out of the system and go into a new one. But as far as the Islamic system is concerned, it is workable, it is viable, it has worked before, it can work again in small communities like us. Like us, we have demonstrated that it can work if people are cooperative, and within those who are ready to accept this system, this is workable. We have a system of amana in Rabwa, it has also been in Qadian for many years, in which people who deposit their money do not expect any interest, nor are they charged for any services. And the amana just keeps their account with them, and whenever they require they can take it out. And also there are other shirakat, we call it, a company-like shareholding, like associations of tijarat, trade, etc. among Ahmadis, which have completely no influence of usury. But still, it is false to claim that Ahmadis as such have been able to escape the influence of this system of usury. The individual traders have to have trade with other individuals who do not believe in this non-usury system. They have to go to the banks for letters of credit and things, and they have to export things and import things again through banks. So it's impossible for communities or countries or individuals to totally escape at this time of history. But I'm sure if Ahmadiyyat is given some foothold somewhere with the grace of Allah, will ultimately work out. Please. Yes?
I just wanted to mention that Sheikh Mubarak from his Imam in India, he invited members of the UK Jamaat to start a similar fund like we have in Thailand, and that is in existence in the UK now. There are many members that put down money on which they do not get any earnings or
Yes, that's right, but again that does not solve the other problem. Yes, thank you.
What's happening in
Right, yes.
is also happening in this country.
Right, thank you. Yes, please, Wari Sahib. Just a minute, Wari Sahib, there is a lady who wants to ask a question. So after she has finished, then I'll permit you, right? Yes? Is your voice being carried by the loudspeaker system or directly? Could you kindly speak into the microphone? While Sam, again, it doesn't seem to have come through wires. Yes, please, could you repeat?
I'd like to ask a question on behalf of the young listener.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, we had a seminar for English women at the London Mosque. These women have now invited us to do a seminar at the university for teaching students who are in the schools. I'd like to know if our ladies, if it is possible for our ladies to give speeches to the students who will be both men and women, so all of you have both of.
Yes, of course you are permitted. Why not?
Is it okay if we show our mouths and our eyes?
Now listen, these questions have to be asked directly to me, from me, or from the Imam or Amir Sahib here. I mean, this is not the forum for asking these individual questions. I mean, this is an administrative affair where you want a special permission. As far as the jurisprudence is concerned, a Muslim lady is permitted to address a men's gathering if it is for the sake of some useful purpose, some necessity. Not just to appear vainly or for the purposes in which generally nowadays you find the Western society being addressed, most often, I mean, but for a real solid purpose you can be permitted. But for this you have to ask particular permission from your Jamaat so that this permission is not misused, because this situation is inherent with dangers. Some people, in the name of addressing people, they can go beyond certain limits and destroy the system of Parda altogether. So you have to apply these preventive measures. You write to Imam Sahib or Amir Sahib about this and explain your case and get the permission.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
It is the grace and mercy of Allah Ta'ala that the Prophet Muhammad and his colleagues have enlightened us on the subject of Islam and Biyah, immunity from sins. Now, it is clear for us that the stories attributed to previous prophets were fabrications and without any truth. I wonder if the ulama of today still holds such a belief that the previous prophets committed some sins. May I request Hazur to explain this point?
Yes, I know that many ulama of today does believe in this, and they stick to their older doctrine that certain prophets of Allah committed sins, and they think that those sins have also been mentioned in the Holy Quran and the Bible, and they believe in all these stories and tales which have been attributed to certain very great prophets of Allah, so that almost all the prophets mentioned in the Holy Quran have been attributed with some sin, some crime. Ahmadis do not believe in this, and Ahmadis defend the position of each and every prophet in this regard. But this is again not the forum for me to discuss all this. At the appropriate time, I have discussed it before and I will discuss it again, but not here at this forum. It's a much longish answer that you expect, one should expect from this question. What they have written about the prophets, what are the sources from which they have taken that material, and why we reject that as false and things. So even I will not be able to finish this regarding one prophet here.
What I thought was that some of the prophets and meaning position and other prophets like that, this is one of the marks, so probably should tell the world what
We will tell the world. We have been telling the world.
are doing that.
We have been telling the world, and the world knows it, that and this is Ahmadiyya position. But if you consider yourself the world, then I'll tell you again perhaps sometimes, but not now. As far as the rest of the world is concerned, I tell you, we have been telling this. I have even mentioned it in some of my khutbah sermons and my question answer sessions. This has been discussed at some length. But at this time I don't want to repeat all this, because as I told you, we are short of time and this is not a question which can occupy so short a space.
That's why you erroneously asked.
For what?
That's why I asked you the meeting forgiveness for erroneously if I ask any question.
No, there's no question of any forgiveness. This is just a simple statement of things you are making, and I'm answering you in the same way. Why should you keep on craving forgiveness for things you have not committed? In this regard, you are immune completely. All right, please, go ahead. Yes.
As B is mentioned in the Holy Quran, what is the good kindly let us know?
What is mentioned?
B.
That's all mean, yes. Honeybee, yes.
Honeybee is mentioned in the Holy Quran.
Yes.
Would Hazur kindly let us know if the silkworm is mentioned in the Holy Quran or
What?
in the hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
So, what is it? Silkworm. If silkworm has also been mentioned. Now I don't see, silk has been mentioned, of course, but not the silkworm. No. I would, of course it is useful, but there are also other useful things which have not been mentioned, particularly by name I mean. In principle, the Holy Quran goes on repeatedly making the claim that Allah has made everything useful and for a set purpose, and everything serves a purpose and is subservient to the cause of man. Everything has been created for the sake of man. So under this larger claim, in fact, everything which is created is useful. It is serving some useful purpose. So on that ground, you cannot eliminate anything. If every useful thing has to be mentioned by name by the Holy Quran, then the whole world of creation, animate as well as inanimate, has to be mentioned by name, it's not possible. I mean, it's possible for Allah, but not possible for you to read through all this. Silkworm? Of course silk is mentioned, but why are you so particularly interested in silkworm being mentioned?
Because it produces silk, which is very...
Of course it does. Other things producing other things. Why shouldn't they be mentioned? And I replied only that no. No, Harira has been mentioned, but the silkworm is not mentioned. I mean, again, with due apologies to you, of course. Unfortunately, I can't find any reference in the Holy Quran to silkworm. And we feel so dejected and sad about it that I'm surprised why you are taking such deep interest in silkworm alone of all the things. Of course the product is good, but don't you think cotton is also good? Isn't it better than silk? In so many ways.
The product he's mentioning is mentioned anyway.
I know that he also admits it, but the point is that all the factors responsible for producing cotton should also be mentioned, shouldn't they? Why not?
Can I come?
Yes, please go ahead.
Those are mosquito mentioned also.
Yes?
The small thing mentioned like mosquito.
Yes?
This is it.
And also an ant is mentioned, a small thing like ant. Isn't it? There is a smaller thing than mosquito. An ant has been mentioned. And also bacteria have been mentioned under the name of jinn. Yet, unfortunately for you, the silkworm has not been mentioned. So what is the big objection? Yes, please. Sorry. Any question?
Probably he wanted to know that produce of one verb is allowed for us to use and the produce of the other is not. If it was mentioned in the Holy Quran.
No, it is not mentioned, so the question drops automatically. You know, I know what is bothering you. You have not been able to explain yourself. You think that the honey bee is mentioned only because it is producing honey. And it's a useful thing. So you think that silk is even more useful perhaps, or at least at par with honey. Not much lower in order, much lower. So why a thing much lower in order is not mentioned? This is the question. I mean, after you put the question in its true perspective, it finishes. It dies a natural death.